Cathar's ancient, multi-jointed digits still trembled when the nightmares came. Not the grand, sweeping visions of cosmic horror that plagued younger generations, but the precise, chilling memories of something far more terrestrial. Something that defied all logic, all reason, all known galactic military doctrine. He had been a data scribe then, barely out of his chrysalis phase, processing endless streams of reports in the Xylosian hegemony's central intelligence hub. The crystal spires of the capital world, Xylos Prime, shimmered beneath a perpetually soft, amber sky, a monument to their civilization's unchallenged might for millennia. From his humble data chamber, Cathar categorized new species, assessed resource potential, and logged the occasional, easily quelled rebellion on a distant protectorate. His work was routine, predictable. The Xylosian hegemony reigned supreme, their fleets numbering in the untold thousands, their mastery of energy manipulation and quantum entanglement unparalleled. They knew no defeat. Then came the reports from Sector Gamma 7, a sparsely charted region on the galactic fringe. A single, unremarkable star system designated Sol. Preliminary scans were almost laughable. A single, vibrant planet teeming with life, no orbital defenses, no colonies and technology that lagged centuries behind galactic standards. Their fastest vessels still relied on chemical propellants. Their energy sources were primitive, barely touching fusion principles. Yet the planet, which its inhabitants called Earth, possessed vast, untapped reserves of psionic-reactive minerals and a rare variant of dark matter crystals, both essential for Xylosian long-range propulsion. Grand Strategos Kyler, a seasoned veteran with 1,000 campaign ribbons, reviewed the initial survey. Cathar remembered the meeting, the subtle click of Kyler's chitinous mandibles as he dismissed the threat. Barely evolved bipedals. He had scoffed, his voice a low thrum through the comlink. They play with crude tools they barely comprehend. We will offer them the honor of integration into the hegemony. Should they decline, we will simply claim what is rightfully ours. 3 cycles later, the first human vessel arrived at the Xylosian diplomatic outpost orbiting Traxxas 4, a major jump-gate nexus. Cathar, by chance, was assigned to the welcoming committee, a role usually reserved for junior data scribes who needed exposure to foreign delegations. He stood in the cavernous docking bay, surrounded by dozens of high-ranking Xylosian officials, as the alien craft slowly maneuvered into position. It was an affront to Xylosian aesthetics. Where their vessels were sleek, organic, flowing like spun moonlight, the human ship was a collection of harsh angles and blunt metallic plates. It looked less like a starfaring craft and more like a block of industrial machinery propelled through the void. Its hull bore strange, geometric patterns that their universal translators struggled to parse. Yet despite its crude appearance, the ship docked with remarkable precision, the pilot displaying a startling mastery of celestial navigation. As the landing clamps engaged and the airlock hissed open, Cathar felt his first, inexplicable tremor of unease. Perhaps these humans were not as unsophisticated as assumed. 3 figures emerged, walking with an unexpected, almost jarring confidence. They were smaller than the Xylosians, soft-skinned bipeds with strange, fibrous growths on their cranial plates. The lead figure, a male, introduced himself as Captain Elias Vance. He wore a dark, form-fitting uniform adorned with metallic insignia that clinked softly with each stride. His eyes, a startling shade of green, were sharp and constantly shifting, assessing every aspect of the docking bay with the predatory intensity of a hunter. When he spoke, his voice was calm, controlled, yet there was an underlying current of something that made Cathar's epidermal plates prickle. "Greetings," Captain Vance stated in surprisingly fluent galactic common. "I am Captain Elias Vance of the Terran exploration vessel, the Voyager. This is Ambassador Lena Petrova and Commander Jack's ghost Riley. We come in peace, seeking dialogue and mutual understanding between our civilizations. Ambassador Petrova stepped forward, a diplomatic smile gracing her lips. She was smaller than the captain, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to absorb every detail. She carried herself with the composed grace of someone accustomed to high-stakes negotiations, speaking in measured tones about cooperation and shared progress. But it was the third human, Commander Riley, who caused the most profound discomfort. He stood slightly behind the others, silent, observant. While Captain Vance and Ambassador Petrova engaged the Xylosian officials, Riley's attention roved from the docking bay's security cameras to the positioning of the Xylosian guards, to the access corridors leading deeper into the station. It was the gaze of a strategist, meticulously mapping vulnerabilities. The formal reception took place in the Grand Conclave Chamber, a magnificent hall designed to overwhelm visiting dignitaries. Walls of shimmering crystal displayed swirling nebulae, and the ceiling projected a real-time feed of the star-flecked void. Grand Strategos Kyler presided from the central dais, his imposing form draped in ceremonial robes. Cathar, relegated to the back row with other junior staff, meticulously transcribed the proceedings. Ambassador Petrova presented gifts from Earth, intricate pieces of art, recordings of human music, and data files containing basic scientific information. She spoke eloquently of cultural exchange and peaceful coexistence. Yet, Cathar found his gaze repeatedly drawn to Captain Vance. The human's eyes never ceased their restless movement. While his ambassador spoke of harmony, the captain appeared to be memorizing the chamber's layout, counting the guards, noting the exact location of every exit and potential choke point. It was the behavior of a being who thought like a warrior, even within a diplomatic setting. Commander Riley was even more disquieting. He carried a compact device, ostensibly a cultural exchange terminal, designed to display human history. But Cathar's advanced sensor array, subtly integrated into his datapad, detected that the device was doing far more listening than sharing. Its miniature, passive sensors quietly recorded everything from the room's structural dimensions to the faint electromagnetic signatures of Xylosian security systems. The negotiations spanned 3 cycles. The humans were unfailingly polite, remarkably patient, and surprisingly well-versed in galactic geopolitics. They posed insightful questions about established trade routes, diplomatic protocols, and galactic legal frameworks. Ambassador Petrova seemed genuinely committed to forging peaceful relations, but the subtle anomalies persisted. Captain Vance consistently positioned himself nearest an exit. Commander Riley's questions, masked as innocent curiosity about Xylosian history, invariably drifted toward military logistics and strategic resources. And all 3 humans maintained constant, encrypted communication with their vessel, transmitting regular, detailed reports. On the final cycle, Grand Strategos Kyler delivered the hegemony's offer. The Xylosian hegemony would graciously welcome Earth as a protectorate world. Humans would be granted limited self-governance in exchange for mining rights to their psionic reactive minerals and strategic cooperation. It was a standard offer, one accepted by dozens of less advanced species throughout the galaxy. Ambassador Petrova listened politely, requested time to consult with her government, and promised a definitive response within 6 cycles. The humans departed with the same quiet confidence they had displayed upon arrival, leaving behind their gifts and carrying with them an exhaustive record of everything they had observed and learned. As the Voyager vanished into hyperspace, Cathar felt an odd sense of relief. There had been something unsettling about the human delegation, a disconcerting mismatch between their supposed primitivism and their actual demeanor. But they were gone now, and life on Traxxas 4 returned to its placid routine. 6 cycles later, Earth's response arrived. It was courteous but unyielding. humanity respectfully declined the hegemony's offer of protection, opting instead to maintain their independence. They expressed gratitude for the Xylosians' hospitality and voiced hope that peaceful relations could continue despite their differing viewpoints. Grand Strategos Kyler was not pleased. Within one galactic solar cycle, the Xylosian High Command had voted unanimously to claim Earth by force. After all, what could a single, primitive planet possibly do against the mightiest military in the galaxy? Cathar would spend the next 3 standard years learning exactly what humans could do when threatened, and he would never forget the lesson. Cathar still felt a phantom tremor in his joint sockets when he recalled the day the war began. He had been promoted to senior data analyst after correctly forecasting the outcomes of several minor trade disputes in the Outer Rim. His new data chamber offered a sweeping view of Xylos Prime's orbital traffic and granted access to highly classified intelligence reports. He believed he understood the nature of conflict. The Xylosian hegemony declared war on Earth on a solar standard Tuesday morning. Grand Strategos Kyler himself delivered the announcement from the bridge of his flagship, the Implacable Might. The message was broadcast across all hegemony frequencies, a chilling warning to humanity and a stark demonstration to any other species contemplating defiance. The primitive world known as Earth has rejected our generous offer of protection. Kyler's voice, amplified and resonating with authority, thrummed across the galaxy. They have chosen isolation over cooperation, ignorance over wisdom. We shall now claim what is rightfully ours by force. This action will serve as a definitive lesson to all who would dare oppose the natural order of galactic civilization. Cathar watched the announcement from the intelligence center, surrounded by dozens of other analysts and officers. Every Xylosian present radiated an aura of unshakable confidence. Earth possessed no orbital defenses, no fleet of consequence, and technology that was centuries behind. The betting pools within the intelligence division gave the war at most 3 standard weeks. But the human response defied every expectation. Instead of panic or desperate diplomatic overtures, Earth's initial action was a system-wide recall. Every human vessel in known space merchant freighters, research ships, even the few, insignificant military craft they possessed began a frantic race back toward their home system. Simultaneously, every human colony and outpost scattered across the nascent galactic arm went silent, severing all communication with the external galaxy. "They are preparing to surrender," suggested Subcommander Valter, one of the senior intelligence officers, his optical sensors flickering with certainty. "No doubt they are gathering their leadership to negotiate terms." Cathar wasn't so sure. He had been meticulously studying the reports from human-controlled space, attempting to decipher the frenetic activity behind the communication blackout. The few long-range sensors capable of penetrating the cloaked human territory registered massive energy signatures and industrial activity on a scale that seemed impossible for such a fledgling civilization. 3 standard weeks after the declaration of war, the first Xylosian scout ships reached the outer edge of the Sol system. What they encountered defied every established military doctrine. The asteroid belt between their 3rd and 5th planetary bodies had been transformed into an impenetrable fortress. Every significant celestial rock bristled with weapon platforms, energy shield generators, and advanced sensor arrays. The construction was crude by Xylosian standards, utilizing unrefined metals and visible power conduits. Yet, there was an overwhelming abundance of it. Thousands of defensive positions, all interconnected by a complex network of supply tunnels and communication lines, like some grotesque mineral organism. The gas giant, a swirling behemoth the humans called Jupiter, had become a colossal shipyard. Orbital platforms, like metallic parasites, clung to the planet's upper atmosphere, each one launching newly constructed vessels at an impossible rate. The ships were angular and ungraceful, built for raw function rather than elegant form, yet they were being produced at a tempo that outstripped anything in Xylosian manufacturing history. A human broadcast originating from Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, pierced the system-wide static. The voice, calm and resolute, belonged to someone identified as Commander Eris Thorne, apparently in charge of the outer system defenses. "Turn around and go home. This is your only warning." Grand Strategos Kyler scoffed when he received the transmission. A single primitive world, threatening the greatest fleet in galactic history, struck him as a pathetic jest. He ordered his advance forces to sweep aside the human defenses and proceed toward Earth. The battle for Europa changed everything. Europa, a moon previously noted for its subsurface oceans, had been converted into a formidable military base. The Xylosian assault commenced at dawn, ship time, with a standard orbital bombardment designed to neutralize defensive positions. Plasma cannons and focused particle beams lanced out from the Xylosian fleet, striking what appeared to be the main command center. But the humans had learned. During their initial diplomatic visit, Commander Riley's cultural exchange device had meticulously recorded everything, from weapon signatures to tactical doctrines. When the bombardment ceased and the Xylosian assault vessels moved in, they found only empty, reinforced bunkers and automated decoys. The true defense erupted from unexpected vectors. Human ships, angular and functional, emerged from behind asteroids, from the shadows of Jupiter's other moons, and even from within the swirling, turbulent atmosphere of the gas giant itself. They attacked in small, coordinated groups, striking the precise weak points in the Xylosian formations before vanishing back into cover. Captain Eva Rostova commanded one such human vessel, a ship named Ironclad Vengeance. It was smaller than any Xylosian destroyer, armed with primitive kinetic accelerators and simple, explosive missiles. But Rostova wielded it like a surgeon's scalpel, carving through the enemy formation, inflicting maximum damage before disappearing back into the treacherous asteroid field. The Xylosian fleet found itself entangled in a type of conflict never before encountered. Instead of lining up for traditional broadside engagements, the humans darted in and out of cover like stinging insects, striking repeatedly before retreating. Their kinetic weapons, though weaker than Xylosian plasma cannons, seemed to pierce with surgical precision, exploiting every known vulnerability in Xylosian armor plating. General Marcus Thorne, brother to Commander Eris, coordinated the overall defense from a hidden command center deep within Europa's icy crust. Intelligence intercepts indicated he had been a civilian logistics manager before the conflict, responsible for complex supply chains for human merchant fleets. Now, he applied those same skills to coordinate a defensive network that spanned the entire solar system. But the most shocking discovery occurred when Xylosian forces managed to capture a heavily damaged human vessel. The technology discovered within defied all preliminary assessments. The onboard computers were significantly more advanced than initial scans had suggested, utilizing quantum processing systems that rivaled nascent Xylosian designs. The weapons, though simpler in concept, had been refined to incredible, brutal efficiency. Most disturbing was the undeniable evidence of hyper-accelerated technological advancement. Components within the captured ship displayed clear signs of having been reverse-engineered from Xylosian technology. Somehow, in a mere 6 cycles since their diplomatic visit, the humans had assimilated sensor readings and equipment samples, using them to rapidly upgrade their own systems. Dr. Erin Kim, according to intelligence reports, headed human research and development. Her hidden, subterranean laboratories churned out constant innovations, analyzing and improving captured Xylosian technology. They weren't merely copying. They were refining, streamlining, making it cheaper and easier to mass produce. The siege of Europa raged for 6 cycles. Grand Strategos Kyler hurled wave after wave of ships at the human defenses, expecting each assault to shatter their resolve. But the humans had prepared for exactly this type of attrition. Every approach vector was covered by overlapping fields of fire. Every apparent weakness was protected by hidden gun emplacements. On the 7th cycle, Captain Rostova made her final transmission. The ironclad Vengeance had been crippled by plasma fire, its engines failing, life support systems failing. Rather than surrender, Rostova aimed her dying vessel at the implacable might and pushed her engines to overload. "Every inch you take will cost you blood," she declared, her voice calm amidst the chaos. "Every step toward our homeworld will be your last. We will make you pay for every meter of space, every drop of fuel, every moment you spend in our system. This is only the beginning." The ironclad Vengeance struck the implacable might's primary shields at maximum velocity. The impact didn't destroy the flagship, but it sent a shockwave through both fleets, a message that resonated with chilling clarity. The humans would not surrender. They would not negotiate terms of defeat. They would fight with every fiber of their being, no matter the cost. Grand Strategos Kyler ordered a tactical withdrawal, his battered fleet limping back to the edge of the solar system. As they pulled back, long-range sensors detected more human ships approaching from deeper within their territory. Vessels that were larger, more angular, and more advanced than anything they had faced at Europa. Cathar, back on Xylos Prime, meticulously studied the intelligence reports, trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be weak and disorganized. Instead, they had transformed their entire civilization into a fighting machine in less than 6 cycles. But the most terrifying revelation wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their attitude. Other species fought wars to gain territory or resources. They understood concepts like acceptable losses and strategic withdrawal. The humans seemed to view conflict as something that had to be won utterly and completely, no matter the cost. As more reports flowed in from the Sol system, Cathar began to realize that the Xylosian hegemony had made a terrible, irredeemable mistake. They hadn't declared war on a primitive species. They had awakened something ancient and fierce, something that understood violence in ways no other galactic civilization had ever truly conceived. The humans were learning. Every battle taught them something new about Xylosian tactics and technology. Every engagement made them stronger, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. And they seemed to possess an endless capacity for adaptation and improvement. Grand Strategos Kyler was already requesting massive reinforcements, calling for the largest fleet in Xylosian history to crush human resistance once and for all. But Cathar harbored a growing, sickening suspicion that more ships would not be enough. The humans had shown they could turn any disadvantage into a weapon, any weakness into a devastating strength. The war had just begun, and already it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. This, Cathar knew in his very core, was where the real hell began. This nightmare, this impossible conflict, was just starting. What do you think happens next in this relentless struggle? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to follow Cathar's harrowing journey through the human war front, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more HFY stories. Where are you watching from today? We'd love to know. Cathar's new role as senior intelligence analyst came with access to classified reports that stole his sleep cycles. The conflict had stretched for 18 cycles, and nothing unfolded as the Xylosian High Command had predicted. What should have been a swift conquest had mutated into a spreading nightmare, consuming multiple star systems. The humans had done something no other species in galactic history had dared. They refused to fight the war everyone expected. Instead of meeting Xylosian fleets in open battle, they had unveiled what their strategists termed an asymmetric warfare doctrine. It was a concept that defied all traditional military understanding. General Lena Petrova, the former diplomat now leading the Human Strategic Planning Division from a hidden base somewhere within their fortified asteroid belt, was responsible. Intelligence reports described her as a former academic, an expert in ancient Earth military history. Now, she was applying lessons from primitive human conflicts to modern space warfare with chilling effectiveness. The first major demonstration of this doctrine came at the Battle of Proxima Outpost. The Xylosian Third Fleet had seized the human facility after a brief siege, intending to repurpose it as a forward operating base. Grand Strategos Kyler's chosen successor, Admiral Xylaris, had established his headquarters in the outpost's command center, confidently planning the next phase of the offensive. 3 cycles later, the outpost ceased to exist. The humans had meticulously rigged every critical system with hidden explosive charges before their evacuation. But they had done more than merely plant devices. They had painstakingly studied Xylosian occupation procedures from previous conflicts, predicting precisely how the invading forces would utilize the captured facility. The detonations were timed to cause maximum destruction when the outpost was fully operational and teeming with enemy personnel. Admiral Xylaris and most of his senior staff perished in the blast. The Third Fleet, its command structure decapitated, was forced into a humiliating tactical withdrawal to regroup. The psychological impact, however, far surpassed the tactical loss. Xylosian forces began to mistrust every captured facility, every piece of human equipment, every system they believed they had secured. A pervasive paranoia began to rot at the edges of their resolve. Colonel Jack's Ghost Riley, the quiet, observant commander from the initial diplomatic visit, now led the human special operations forces that executed these deep strike missions. Intelligence intercepts revealed he had been a mining engineer before the conflict, intimately familiar with excavation, demolitions, and subterranean construction. Now, he led teams of specialists who could infiltrate supposedly impenetrable enemy positions, place charges with almost surgical precision, and vanish without a trace before anyone knew they had been there. Major Zara Lai, who served as Riley's second-in-command, coordinated intelligence gathering and target selection. Her prior role as a cultural attaché, studying Xylosian military doctrine and procedures, now allowed her teams to predict enemy movements and strike at the most vulnerable moments. The Xylosian military had never encountered an enemy that operated in such a fashion. Their traditional tactics assumed that conquered territory remained conquered, that defeated enemy forces remained defeated, that supply lines, once established, were safe. The humans systematically ignored all of these assumptions. Lieutenant Commander Davian Cross pioneered what became known as kinetic bombardment, utilizing simple, dense rods of unrefined metal accelerated to incredible speeds. The concept was brutally elegant. Take an inert projectile, accelerate it to a significant fraction of light speed, and let physics do the rest. The impact energy was equivalent to major energy weapon strikes, but the ammunition required no exotic materials or complex manufacturing processes, making it endlessly scalable. The first kinetic strike obliterated a Xylosian supply depot in the Kepler system. The depot was supposed to be safely behind the front lines, protected by patrol ships and defensive satellites. Cross's projectiles arrived silent and unseen, invisible to Xylosian sensors until the moment of impact. The resulting explosion was visible from orbit, a blinding flash that shattered external windows on nearby Xylosian space stations. Dr. Anya Sharma, according to intelligence reports, led the development of adaptive artificial intelligence systems that enabled human ships to operate in environments where Xylosian vessels simply could not function. Dense asteroid fields, ionized nebulae, and the turbulent, gravity-warped space around pulsars became hiding places from which human forces could strike without warning and vanish without a trace. Their small, angular ships, once dismissed as crude, navigated these treacherous zones with impossible agility, their AI cores learning and adapting to every shift in the environment. But what truly exasperated Xylosian commanders was the human approach to technology and tactics. Other civilizations possessed thousands of cycles of military tradition, resulting in rigid doctrines and established procedures. Humans had been in space for less than a century, meaning they possessed no preconceptions about what was possible or impossible in space warfare. When Xylosian ships proved superior in direct combat, humans simply built faster, more maneuverable vessels that avoided direct combat entirely. When enemy sensors could track conventional drives, humans developed new propulsion systems that left different energy signatures. When traditional weapons failed to penetrate Xylosian armor, humans engineered entirely new types of ammunition, sometimes cobbled together from scavenged materials. Cathar read reports of human engineers who could redesign a ship's entire systems in mere hours. Human pilots who could navigate through impossibly complex, chaotic terrain. Human scientists who could solve technological problems that had stumped galactic civilization for centuries, all under the relentless pressure of war. It was as if the constant crucible of conflict had accelerated human development beyond all reasonable limits. The breaking point for Cathar and many other Xylosian analysts came when Admiral Silas Thorne, brother to the Europa defense commander, assumed command of the newly formed human deep strike fleet. Thorne had been a cargo ship captain before the war, intimately familiar with the commercial shipping lanes that connected distant star systems. Now, he utilized that same knowledge to plan devastating raids that struck at the very heart of Xylosian territory. The raid on the Xylosian industrial complex at Glyos Prime was a masterpiece of planning and ruthless execution. The complex was located 12 jump points behind the established front lines, fiercely protected by patrol fleets and early warning systems. It produced the quantum processors that powered every Xylosian ship computer, making it one of the most vital facilities in the entire hegemony. Thorne's fleet approached through a series of uninhabited systems, using gravitational slingshots around uncharted gas giants to build up speed while remaining hidden from long-range sensors. They emerged from hyperspace just outside the complex's defensive perimeter, moving too swiftly for the Guardian fleets to intercept. Captain Anya Rostova, who had miraculously survived the Battle of Europa, commanded the assault ship Defiant Dawn, leading the direct attack on the primary manufacturing facility. Her ship, refitted and upgraded since its Europa engagement, was smaller and less heavily armed than the Xylosian defenders, but it carried experimental weapons designed specifically for this mission. Plasma cutters that could slice through station hulls, electromagnetic pulse bombs that disabled computer systems, and kinetic penetrators that could punch through multiple levels of hardened armor. Captain Torvin Kale, commanding the Iron Resolve, a new ship named for the one Captain Rostova had sacrificed, led a diversionary attack that drew the main defensive fleet away from the primary target. His vessel engaged 3 Xylosian cruisers simultaneously, using hit-and-run tactics to keep them occupied while the primary assault proceeded. When his weapons were depleted and his ship badly damaged, he aimed his failing vessel at the enemy flagship and initiated an uncontrolled ramming maneuver at maximum velocity. The entire operation lasted less than 2 standard hours. When it concluded, the Glyos Prime complex was a burning ruin, its production capacity crippled for years to come. The economic impact rippled through the entire Xylosian war machine, forcing them to ration quantum processors and delay the construction of new ships. But the raid's true significance extended far beyond its immediate tactical results. Thorne's fleet had demonstrated that nowhere in Xylosian space was truly safe. If humans could strike at heavily defended industrial complexes deep behind enemy lines, they could strike anywhere. Commander Pete Wells coordinated the logistics that made these operations possible. He had managed supply chains for civilian transportation companies before the conflict, ensuring that cargo reached its destination on schedule despite mechanical failures, route changes, and unexpected delays. Now, he applied the same meticulous skills to military operations, keeping human strike forces supplied and equipped no matter how far they operated from their bases. The psychological warfare was proving as devastating as the physical destruction. Xylosian forces began to see human saboteurs everywhere. Every system malfunction might be the result of human interference. Every equipment failure could be evidence of hidden infiltration. The paranoia spread like a disease through the ranks, causing commanders to second-guess their own decisions and distrust their own equipment. Cathar found himself assigned to a special task force attempting to understand human military psychology. The reports he read painted a disturbing picture of a species that approached warfare like a complex scientific problem to be solved. They analyzed every battle, studied every failure, and constantly refined their tactics based on new information. But the most unsettling aspect was their boundless creativity. Where other species rigidly adhered to established military doctrines, humans invented entirely new forms of warfare on the spot. They transformed mining equipment into weapons, converted civilian technology into devastating military applications, and found tactical uses for things that no military academy had ever considered. The war was entering its second year, and the Xylosian hegemony was facing something unprecedented in galactic history. They were losing to a species that should have been conquered in weeks. The humans were not merely fighting back, they were winning. Grand Strategos Kyler, his chitinous mandibles clicking with frustration, was already requesting unprecedented reinforcements, calling for the largest military mobilization in Xylosian history. But Cathar harbored a growing, sickening suspicion that more ships and weapons would not be enough. The humans were evolving too swiftly, adapting too effectively, learning too much from every encounter. Cathar would never forget the day Grand Strategos Kyler announced Operation Galactic Crucible. The old warrior stood before the assembled fleet commanders in the war room of his new flagship, the Imperial Decree, his massive frame casting oppressive shadows across the holographic display showing the distant Sol system. After 2 standard years of setbacks and humiliating defeats, the Xylosian High Command had decided to end the human problem once and for all. "We have assembled the largest fleet in galactic history," Kyler declared, his voice echoing through the chamber, resonant with forced authority. 3,000 vessels from across the hegemony, every class of ship, from scout craft to heavy battle cruisers. The humans cannot possibly resist such overwhelming force. The target was New Horizon, a human colony world with nearly 2 million inhabitants. Intelligence reports suggested it was lightly defended, protected by only a small patrol fleet and basic orbital defenses. The plan was simple. Surround the planet, demand surrender, and use the existential threat to civilian lives to force Earth into accepting Xylosian terms. Cathar had been promoted again, this time to the intelligence staff aboard the flagship itself. From his position in the command center, he could see the tactical displays showing the massive Xylosian formation as it approached the Sol system. Ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace, taking positions around the human colony in a sphere of metal and weapons that stretched across millions of kilometers. The siege began exactly as planned. Grand Strategos Kyler broadcast his ultimatum on all frequencies, demanding immediate surrender and threatening orbital bombardment if the colonists refused to comply. The human response came 12 hours later, transmitted from the planetary surface by someone identifying herself as Governor Ilara Vance. Her face, projected onto the main screen, was calm, resolute, despite the impossible odds she faced. "We have received your demands," Governor Vance said, her voice steady and clear. "The people of New Horizon vote to remain free. We will not surrender our world to foreign occupation. Do what you think you must." Grand Strategos Kyler was enraged by the defiance, but he held back from immediate retaliation. Destroying the colony would eliminate potential hostages and might provoke an even stronger, more desperate response from Earth. Instead, he ordered the fleet to begin a systematic blockade, cutting off all supply lines and communications while preparing for a ground invasion. That was when Admiral Serena Vargas arrived with the human relief fleet. The first sign of trouble came from the sensor operators on the outer perimeter. Long-range scanners detected hyperspace distortions at the edge of the system, indicating the approach of multiple vessels. The readings were confusing at first, showing energy signatures that didn't match any known human ship designs. Admiral Vargas's fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, but something was wrong with their approach vector. Instead of heading directly toward the besieging Xylosian forces, they took up positions near the system's asteroid belt and gas giant. Their ships were larger than previous human vessels, sleek and angular designs that looked more advanced than anything intelligence reports had predicted. The human admiral requested a communication channel, and her image appeared on the main display screen. Vargas was an older woman with streaks of gray in her hair and sharp, piercing eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had made impossible decisions and lived with the consequences. "Grand Strategos Kyler," she said, using perfect galactic common. "I am Admiral Serena Vargas of the Terran Defense Force. You have 48 hours to withdraw your forces from this system. This is your only warning." The audacity of the statement drew snorts of derision from several Xylosian officers. A human fleet numbering perhaps 300 ships was challenging a force 10 times larger. Grand Strategos Kyler himself seemed amused by what he considered a pathetic bluff. "Admiral Vargas," he replied with condescending politeness, "you are outnumbered 10 to 1. Your ships are primitive compared to Xylosian technology. I suggest you surrender now and spare your crews unnecessary suffering." Vargas's expression didn't change. "You have 47 hours and 58 minutes, she said, and cut the transmission. What transpired next became known in galactic military circles as Operation Pyrrhic Dawn, though it would be years before anyone understood the true meaning of that chilling name. The human ships began moving through the system in seemingly random patterns, conducting what appeared to be reconnaissance sweeps of the asteroid belt and gas giant. Xylosian sensors tracked their movements, noting that they seemed to be scanning for something specific, but finding no obvious military purpose in their activities. Captain Anya Rostova, commanding the Defiant Dawn, was coordinating with ground teams on New Horizon, though the nature of their communications remained encrypted and unreadable. Captain Torvin Kale, aboard his new Iron Resolve, was equipped with experimental systems that Xylosian scientists couldn't identify, technologies that seemed to bend the laws of physics in impossible ways. But the most concerning development was the behavior of the colonists on New Horizon itself. Instead of showing signs of panic or desperation, the population seemed to be engaged in some kind of organized evacuation. Orbital sensors detected massive movement of people and equipment, but the destinations remained unclear. Commander Pete Wells appeared to be coordinating the logistics of whatever the humans were planning. His transport ships moved constantly between the planet's surface and the outer system, carrying cargo that was carefully shielded from Xylosian scanners. The efficiency of the operation was stunning, moving 2 million people and their essential belongings in less than 2 standard cycles. Grand Strategos Kyler grew increasingly suspicious as the 48-hour deadline approached. His intelligence staff reported that human activity was increasing rather than decreasing, with more ships arriving from deeper in their territory. But the newcomers weren't military vessels. They were converted civilian craft, modified with extra passenger compartments and enhanced life support systems. Captain Kalen Rossi commanded a human ship called the Last Echo, which took up position in the planet's main orbital facility. The vessel appeared to be some kind of command ship, bristling with communication arrays and sensor equipment. Rossi himself was described in intelligence reports as a former civilian security chief who had volunteered for what military analysts assumed was a suicide mission. The deadline arrived with Admiral Vargas's fleet still maintaining their positions near the asteroid belt. Grand Strategos Kyler prepared to demonstrate Xylosian power by ordering a limited bombardment of military targets on the planet's surface. But when his ships moved into bombardment formation, they found something that changed everything. New Horizon was empty. The orbital scans revealed abandoned cities, empty spaceports, and deserted industrial complexes. The entire population had vanished during the 2-cycle evacuation, leaving behind only automated systems and a few volunteer crews to maintain essential services. The humans had successfully evacuated 2 million people right under the noses of the largest fleet in galactic history. Grand Strategos Kyler realized he had been outmaneuvered, but the situation grew horrifically worse when his fleet moved to occupy the abandoned orbital facilities. The humans had left behind more than empty buildings. They had created a trap on a scale that defied comprehension. Captain Rossi transmitted the final message from the Last Echo as Xylosian forces approached the main orbital station. "Admiral Vargas sends her regards," he said, his voice calm and professional. "She wants you to remember that humans always pay their debts." The detonation sequence began with the orbital facilities around New Horizon. Fusion charges that had been carefully placed throughout the infrastructure created a chain reaction that spread to the planet's atmosphere processors, the orbital refineries, and finally, the planet's own core. The humans had turned an entire world into a weapon. But they hadn't stopped there. The asteroid belt that Admiral Vargas's fleet had been scanning contained hidden fusion charges in thousands of asteroids. The gas giant's orbital platforms had been rigged with quantum destabilizers that transformed the planet itself into a stellar furnace. Every piece of infrastructure in the system, every strategic location they had surveyed during their initial visit, had been wired to explode simultaneously. The explosion was visible from neighboring star systems, a flash of light that temporarily blinded sensor arrays across a dozen light-years. When the radiation cleared, the Sol system had become a stellar graveyard, filled with the wreckage of over 1,500 Xylosian ships. Grand Strategos Kyler's flagship, the Imperial Decree, survived the initial blast, protected by its heavy shields and distance from the planet. But the electromagnetic pulse from the explosion had crippled most of his fleet systems. Ships drifted helplessly through space, their crews struggling to restore power and life support. Cathar found himself in an escape pod, watching through a small viewport as the human fleet emerged from the outer system. Admiral Vargas's ships had been safely positioned beyond the blast zone, protected by precise knowledge of exactly when and where the explosions would occur. The human ships moved through the wreckage like patient predators, methodically rescuing survivors and capturing disabled vessels. There was no hatred in their movements, no vengeance, only cold professional efficiency. Cathar would spend the next 3 cycles as a prisoner aboard the human vessel Mercy's Respite before he truly began to comprehend what humanity had become. The chilling, strategic brilliance behind the destruction of an entire star system. It was almost admirable. If you want to dive deeper into the tactics and psychological warfare of the human war front, remember to like this video and subscribe. What do you think the Xylosians will do now, facing an enemy that weaponizes worlds? Let me know your theories in the comments. Cathar would spend the next 3 cycles as a prisoner aboard the human vessel Mercy's Respite before he truly began to comprehend what humanity had become. The ship was a converted medical transport, now repurposed as a holding facility for captured Xylosian personnel. Yet it was unlike any military prison he had ever encountered. The human crew treated their prisoners with an unsettling professional courtesy and an almost clinical care. Medical officers provided treatment for injuries without regard to species or rank. The nutrient paste was adequate, the quarters clean, and the guards polite but ever watchful. Captain Roy Phillips, the ship's commanding officer, made regular rounds, ensuring that prisoners were being treated according to what humans called the rules of conflict engagement. But what disturbed Cathar most was the calm, almost dispassionate efficiency with which the humans conducted their operations. There was no hatred in their voices when they spoke of Xylosian forces, no raw anger or burning desire for vengeance. They treated the devastating conflict like a complex task that needed to be completed, a problem that demanded a definitive solution. After the cataclysm at New Horizon, the Xylosian fleet had scattered in confusion. Some vessels retreated to what they hoped was friendly territory. Others attempted to regroup at designated rally points, while a desperate few tried to continue fighting independently. But the humans, it soon became terrifyingly clear, had anticipated every one of these responses and prepared accordingly. Admiral Susan Blake commanded what the humans termed the Long Hunt, a systematic campaign to eliminate every Xylosian military presence in human space and far beyond. Her fleet was unlike anything seen in previous engagements. The ships were larger, faster, and equipped with technologies that seemed to have advanced by decades in mere cycles. These were not random assaults motivated by a thirst for retribution. Every target was meticulously selected based on its military value and strategic importance. Commander Roy Phillips, who had served as Blake's intelligence chief before taking command of the Mercy's Respite, had spent cycles analyzing Xylosian military infrastructure to identify the most critical nodes in their vast supply network. The first major strike came at the Cathar shipyards, nestled deep within Xylosian territory. The facility had been constructing warships for 3 centuries and was considered one of the most secure installations in the hegemony. But human intelligence, apparently gathered during that initial diplomatic visit and refined over countless encounters, had mapped every approach route, every defensive system, and every vulnerability. Captain Alex Turner led the assault force that penetrated the shipyard's defenses. Turner had been a systems analyst before the conflict, specializing in computer networks and data security. Now, he utilized those same skills to coordinate cyber warfare attacks that disabled the facility's automated defenses, while precisely targeted kinetic strikes annihilated the primary construction bays. The entire operation lasted less than 4 standard hours. When it concluded, the Cathar shipyards were a smoldering ruin, their production capacity eliminated for years to come. But the humans had taken meticulous care to evacuate civilian workers before the attack, demonstrating a level of precision and a strange, unsettling restraint that utterly baffled Xylosian military observers. Similar strikes followed across Xylosian space. Supply depots, communication relays, and military bases were hit with surgical precision while civilian targets remained untouched. The message was chillingly clear. Humanity was not interested in conquest or large-scale extermination. They simply desired to eliminate the Xylosian military's capacity to threaten Earth and its colonies. Cathar learned about these operations from the human guards aboard his prison ship. They spoke openly about their military's progress, displaying none of the secrecy that would be expected in a Xylosian facility. When Cathar, through a translator, asked why they were so willing to share classified information, Captain Phillips offered an answer that still echoes in his memory, a quiet confidence in his voice. "Because it doesn't matter if you know," Phillips had stated. "Even if you somehow escaped and warned your people, there's nothing they could do to stop us. We've studied your military for 3 years. We know how you think, how you fight, how you make decisions. You have no secrets from us anymore." The profound truth of that statement became horrifyingly clear as the long hunt continued. Human forces seemed to anticipate every Xylosian countermaneuver, every attempt at regrouping, every desperate effort to establish new defensive positions. It was as if they could read the minds of enemy commanders and predict their actions days in advance. Dr. Jennifer Hayes led the Human Intelligence Analysis Division that made this level of prediction possible. She had been a behavioral psychologist before the conflict, meticulously studying decision-making processes and group dynamics. Now, she applied those same techniques to military strategy, creating detailed psychological profiles of Xylosian commanders that allowed human forces to predict their likely responses to any situation with chilling accuracy. The turning point, the moment that truly shattered the Xylosian hegemony's will to resist, came when the humans demonstrated their intelligence-gathering capabilities in the most dramatic way possible. Admiral Claire Johnson, commanding the human flagship Indomitable Spirit, broadcast a message on all frequencies throughout Xylosian space. The transmission contained detailed information about every military installation, every government facility, and every strategic resource in the entire hegemony. Cathar watched the broadcast from the common area of his prison ship, surrounded by hundreds of other captured officers. The humans had provided accurate locations, defensive capabilities, personnel numbers, and command structures for installations that were supposed to be top secret. Some of the information was more current than what many Xylosian commanders possessed in their own secure files. "We know where you are," Admiral Johnson's voice, calm and professional, resonated through the chamber. "We know what you have, who commands it, and how you plan to use it. We know your supply routes, your communication codes, and your emergency procedures. We have been watching you, learning from you, and preparing for every possible scenario." The psychological impact was devastating. Xylosian forces throughout the galaxy instantly realized that their enemy possessed complete intelligence about their operations. Every base was compromised, every secret was known, every plan was anticipated. The humans had achieved total information superiority. But Admiral Johnson's message contained more than just a demonstration of intelligence capabilities. It also included terms for ending the protracted conflict. The conditions were, surprisingly, remarkably reasonable. Humanity demanded a formal cessation of hostilities, recognition of their territorial sovereignty, and an ironclad commitment that Xylosian forces would never again threaten human space or any of humanity's allies. There were no demands for tribute, no requirements for territorial concessions, no insistence on cultural changes or political reforms. The humans simply desired to be left alone to develop their civilization in peace. But the implicit threat was clear. Any future aggression would be met with the same ruthless efficiency that had characterized the entire war. Captain Alex Turner personally delivered the peace proposal to the Xylosian High Command. He arrived at the imperial capital aboard a single, small human vessel, carrying diplomatic credentials and a message from Admiral Johnson. The sheer audacity of sending one lone craft into the very heart of enemy territory spoke volumes about humanity's confidence in their intelligence network and defensive capabilities. The negotiations lasted for 6 cycles. Cathar later learned the details from intelligence reports that were declassified after the conflict finally ended. The human delegation was led by Ambassador Lena Petrova, the same diplomat who had visited Traxxas 3 cycles earlier. She was accompanied by Captain Turner and a small staff of military advisors. Ambassador Petrova approached the negotiations with the same professional competence she had shown during first contact. She was polite, patient, and remarkably well-informed about Xylosian culture and legal traditions. But she was also utterly inflexible on the core terms. Humanity would accept nothing less than complete, unassailable security for their territory and their burgeoning allies. The Xylosian High Command found themselves in an impossible position. Continuing the conflict meant facing an enemy that knew their every move and could strike at will, anywhere, anytime. But accepting the peace terms meant acknowledging that a supposedly primitive species had utterly defeated the greatest military power in galactic history. Grand Strategos Kyler, the architect of the original invasion, spoke for many when he addressed the peace conference, his voice heavy with confusion and the bitterness of defeat. "How did we lose to creatures we dismissed as barely civilized?" he rumbled. Captain Turner provided an answer that would be quoted in military academies for generations to come. "You assumed that technology determines victory," he stated, his voice even and devoid of triumph. "But conflicts are won by adaptation, determination, and the willingness to pay whatever price triumph requires. We learned your technology, improved upon it, and used it better than you did. We studied your tactics, found their weaknesses, and developed counters for every strategy you employed. Most importantly, we fought for our survival, while you fought for your convenience." The peace treaty was signed on a solar standard Tuesday morning, exactly 3 standard years after the war had begun. The ceremony took place aboard a neutral space station, with representatives from dozens of galactic civilizations serving as witnesses. Ambassador Lena Petrova signed for humanity, her hand steady. Grand Strategos Kyler, his once imposing form appearing shrunken, affixed his signature for the Xylosian hegemony. As the documents were exchanged, Cathar, still a prisoner awaiting transfer, found himself reflecting on the profound lessons of the war. Humanity had demonstrated that technological superiority meant nothing without the will and wisdom to utilize it effectively. They had shown that determination and boundless adaptability could overcome any advantage of numbers or firepower. But most importantly, they had proven that some prices were simply too high to pay for conquest. The humans had been willing to sacrifice entire worlds rather than surrender their hard-won freedom. The war was over. But for Cathar, the true terror of humanity was only just beginning to sink in. They were not merely a species that fought with unmatched ferocity. They were an entity that learned, adapted, and evolved at a terrifying pace. A problem-solving machine that, once unleashed, could not be contained. The war was over, but Cathar knew, deep in his very core, that the galaxy would never truly be the same. What could possibly be next for a civilization that weaponizes their entire existence for survival? Don't miss the final part of Cathar's harrowing account. Make sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button to join our growing community of HFY enthusiasts. Did you know human militaries once fought over differences in rock formations? Imagine applying that tenacity to space warfare. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Cathar watched the holographic projection of Admiral Johnson's calm, resolute face, the comprehensive data scrolling endlessly behind her. Disbelief rippled through the common area of the Mercy's respite, followed by a chilling, profound silence. The other captured Xylosian officers, their mandibles slack, their multi-jointed digits trembling, stared at the impossible data. Every classified installation, every hidden supply depot, every personal command code, every planned fallback position, it was all there, laid bare for the entire galaxy to see. It was worse than an intelligence leak. It was a total, absolute unveiling of their civilization's most guarded secrets. Their military structure, their economic lifelines, even the personal habits of their most senior strategists, all meticulously documented. The Xylosian hegemony had been stripped naked before the universe. Grand Strategos Kyler's voice, relayed from the imperial decree, shattered the silence on the shared military frequencies. His thrumming tone, usually so authoritative, was now laced with a raw, guttural fury. He dismissed the broadcast as a grotesque fabrication, an elaborate psychological attack designed to sow discord. He ordered a galaxy-wide counter-propaganda campaign, declaring that humanity had resorted to desperate ploys. But Cathar, and indeed every Xylosian officer who had witnessed the human war machine in action, knew the truth. This was no fabrication. This was a statement of irrefutable fact. Despite the crushing evidence, Kyler refused to yield. The very notion of surrendering to such a primitive species was anathema to a civilization that had known millennia of unchallenged dominance. Instead, he ordered one final, desperate maneuver. The shattered remnants of the Xylosian fleet, augmented by emergency mobilizations from deep within their core systems, were to be funneled into a single, overwhelming surge. Their objective: the primary human colony world of Genesis Prime, a bustling nexus of human culture and innovation, deep within their sovereign territory. Kyler planned a lightning strike, believing that even with their vaunted intelligence, humans would not anticipate an attack so brazen, so suicidal. He clung to the ancient Xylosian doctrine of overwhelming force. He would force humanity to bargain, to concede, by putting their most cherished world at existential risk. Cathar felt a cold dread settle in his joint sockets as the Mercy's respite received the frantic, encrypted communiques detailing Kyler's final, mad gamble. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his core, that this was not a desperate gamble, but a final, fatal error. Humanity had anticipated this. They always did. And indeed, they had. The Xylosian fleet, a vast armada cobbled together from every available vessel, warped towards Genesis Prime with grim determination. Their advance was meticulously tracked, not by desperate human scouts, but by their own captured intelligence. Commander Jax Ghost Riley, now elevated to Fleet Tactical Commander, had known every hyperspace jump point, every preferred flight corridor, every Xylosian fleet's typical speed and formation. He had known before Kyler himself had conceived the plan. Admiral Serena Vargas's fleet, far from Genesis Prime, was already in position. Not a defensive line, but a vast, silent hunter's net spread across multiple star systems. The human vessels, now sleek and angular, bristling with advanced energy conduits that pulsed with restrained power, waited. The Xylosian armada, unaware, plunged headlong into the carefully constructed trap. It began not with a grand, glorious battle, but with silence. As the lead Xylosian cruisers emerged from their final jump towards Genesis Prime, their systems went dark. No explosions, no warning shots, just a sudden, absolute cessation of power. Entire squadrons became inert derelicts, drifting through the void. Captain Anya Rostova, at the helm of a new vessel simply designated Spearhead 01, executed precision ghost strikes. Her ship, powered by a new, untraceable drive signature, slipped past Xylosian pickets and unleashed focused electromagnetic pulse bursts, refined from captured Xylosian designs, that overloaded ship-wide power grids without causing structural damage. It was a crippling blow delivered with surgical precision, turning a third of the advancing fleet into helpless hulks before a single shot was fired. Then came the true, terrifying counterattack. From the shadows of gas giants and the gravitational eddies of uncharted asteroid fields, Admiral Vargas's main fleet emerged. These were not the cobbled-together vessels of Europa. These were purpose-built warships, faster and more heavily armed than anything the Xylosians had ever conceived humans capable of producing. Each shot from their rail-accelerated kinetic cannons possessed the force of a small asteroid impact. Their new energy weapons, born from reverse-engineered Xylosian plasma technology, fired focused beams that vaporized armor plating with ease. But the most devastating weapon was not a beam or a projectile, it was information. Dr. Anya Sharma's adaptive artificial intelligence systems, coordinating the human fleet, were feeding real-time tactical adjustments to every human vessel, anticipating Xylosian evasive maneuvers before they were even initiated. Every Xylosian counterattack, every desperate formation shift, every attempt to exploit a perceived weakness the humans already knew. They danced around Xylosian fire, appearing where least expected, striking where most vulnerable. Grand Strategos Kyler, aboard the Imperial Decree, watched in impotent fury as his fleet dissolved around him. He ordered his flagship to break formation and prepare for a direct assault on Genesis Prime, a suicidal last stand. But the Imperial Decree found its path blocked by a single human vessel, the Unyielding Resolve, piloted by Captain Torvin Kale. The Unyielding Resolve, smaller than the flagship, positioned itself directly in the Imperial Decree's projected path. It was an impossible maneuver, a blatant challenge. "Grand Strategos," Captain Kalen Rossi's voice, transmitted from the last Echo, now a mobile command and control platform, resonated through the Imperial Decree's bridge. "Your escape vectors are compromised. Your retreat is impossible. Surrender your vessel, or face a complete power grid collapse." Kyler roared defiance, ordering his crew to fire all available weapons. But as his energy cannons charged, a sudden, blinding flash erupted from the Unyielding Resolve. It wasn't a weapon, but a perfectly timed, targeted quantum entanglement pulse, a technology humanity had only gained full mastery over in the last cycle, derived from data captured at the Cathar shipyards. The pulse rippled through the Imperial Decree's systems, not destroying them but subtly altering the quantum states of its power conduits. The flagship's weapons sputtered, its shields flickered, and its thrusters went silent. The Imperial Decree, the symbol of Xylosian might, hung inert in the void, a colossal, silenced hulk. It was not destroyed, but utterly, humiliatingly neutralized. Grand Strategos Kyler, his chitinous mandibles clicking wildly, found himself a prisoner on his own bridge. The human tactic was deliberate, brutal in its elegance. No wasteful destruction, just total, unequivocal control. Cathar saw it all from the communal observation deck of the Mercy's Respite. A sudden, blinding flash on the distant tactical display, followed by the terrifying sight of hundreds of Xylosian ships going dark. Cheers erupted from the human crew, not triumphant roars, but quiet, professional exhalations of relief. They had done their job. The war was over. The aftermath was swift and absolute. With the hegemony's flagship crippled and its Grand Strategos captured, what remained of the Xylosian High Command had no choice but to accept humanity's terms. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the Xylosian hegemony, once the unchallenged titan of galactic civilization, signed a peace treaty dictated by a species it had dismissed as primitive. The ceremony took place on a neutral space station, a location chosen by humanity. Cathar, along with a select group of other high-ranking Xylosian prisoners, was allowed to observe the proceedings from a secure gallery. The chamber was filled with representatives from every major galactic power, their optical sensors and sensor arrays focused intently on the small human delegation. Ambassador Lena Petrova, her face serene and composed, signed for humanity. Next to her stood Admiral Serena Vargas, General Lena Petrova, Commander Jax Riley, Captain Anya Rostova, Captain Torvin Kale, the names now legendary across the galaxy. Then Grand Strategos Kyler, visibly diminished, his once vibrant chitin dulled, approached the signing table. His multi-jointed digits trembled as he affixed his signature to the treaty document. It was a formal cessation of hostilities, a recognition of humanity's territorial sovereignty, and a pledge that Xylosian forces would never again threaten human space or their allies. There were no reparations, no punitive land grabs, no demands for tribute. Just a simple, unyielding insistence on peace and security. As the documents were exchanged, a silence fell over the chamber, heavier than any Cathar had ever experienced. It was the silence of a galaxy collectively holding its breath, grappling with the impossible. A species that had been in space for barely a century had defeated a millennia-old empire. Cathar was repatriated to Xylos Prime a cycle later, part of the first prisoner exchange. The homeworld, once gleaming with unchallenged superiority, now hummed with a different energy. It was the low thrum of a civilization forced to rebuild, to reevaluate everything it had ever believed. The war had reshaped not just the galactic map, but the Xylosian psyche. Their military academies, once bastions of unshakable tradition, were now filled with fervent debates about human asymmetric warfare and adaptive evolution. Xylosian scientists pored over the salvaged data from human technology, their own research accelerating at a terrifying pace in response to the human challenge. The human war front was indeed hell for the Xylosian hegemony, but not just because of the kinetic bombardments or the system weaponization. It was hell because humanity had not merely defeated them, it had fundamentally understood them, anticipated them, and then calmly, methodically, dismantled their entire military and psychological framework. Cathar, now an old data scribe, still processed reports, though his days of intelligence analysis were long behind him. He watched humanity from a distance, through the sanitized, declassified reports that trickled into the public archives. They were not expanding, not conquering. They were consolidating, innovating, pushing the boundaries of technology and understanding at a pace that remained breathtakingly unsettling. Their worlds hummed with a quiet, confident energy, their ships charting new, peaceful routes, their scientists delving into the mysteries of the cosmos with the same tenacious problem-solving approach they had applied to warfare. The galaxy no longer feared humanity's aggression. It feared their potential. It feared what they might become. For Cathar, the true terror of humanity was not their capacity for violence, but their infinite capacity for growth. They were a civilization that learned, adapted, and evolved at a pace that defied all known galactic evolutionary models. They were the ultimate extreme environment adaptives, forged in the crucible of their own world, and then tempered in the fires of galactic conflict. The war had not broken them, it had merely sharpened them. And the galaxy, Cathar knew, would never truly be the same. Humanity, heck yeah. The galaxy had truly just begun to understand what that meant. This was only the first chapter of their story. Thank you for joining Cathar on his harrowing journey through the human war front. If this finale left you with a profound sense of humanity, heck yeah, please like this video. What was your favorite moment from this entire series? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe for more epic sci-fi stories that explore the incredible potential of humanity.